Hello folks, just having a glass of wine. This isn't one of the ones where I've done any preparation for, but just wanted to say a few things. I thought, I should got to do a video in terms of the intuitive feelings about why it's absolutely obvious that Lucy Letby isn't a murderer, isn't a criminal of any kind, is in fact the opposite, someone with very high conscientiousness, overly high I say overly, that's not a pejorative, it's just that it's unusual in this day and age. And that's from her upbringing, from good parents that love her. And that's why we see her dad coming in to stick by her, to help her through that grievance process. I probably should do a prepared one with regard to this, but just a few things that spring to mind, and they've come up before. You start work in 2012 on a neonatal unit in January. So you wait 3.5 years, and then you decide, I know what, I'll start killing, I'll start murdering babies after 3.5 years. And I know that Evans, that sick individual Evans, and the police, in some sick, weird interaction they're having, want to find more retrospective crimes and murders, because they can't go back on what they've done. They can only go forward. In Shakespeare's play Macbeth, he says a line, it is as tedious, it's something like, I am so over shoes in blood, it were as tedious to go back as to go on. So they're saying, Evans and the police, we don't care whether Lucy Letby is innocent or guilty. We can find some more murders here. Sorry about the sniffing. We'll go on. We'll go forward like Macbeth goes forward, crime after crime. They're committing the crimes against an innocent person and against the parents of those children, lying to them, telling them that their children, their babies were attacked and murdered in some cases. So that's what's actually going on. That's what's going on. Where was I? Lucy Letby starts a job in 2012. Has always wanted to be a nurse. We hear the story that she had a difficult delivery as a baby herself, and was told about that, obviously, by her parents, and thinks, well, I'll try to put something back. I'll be a nurse. Does well at school. Does really well on her course. There's even been everything that she does right is criticised, because this is a reflection not of her, but a reflection of the world. So, for example, I read an article in which it said she wasn't like the other nurses. She was like quieter, and all the other nurses were chatting away. Well, if your baby's in hospital, what do you want? Do you want the nurses chatting away, or do you want them really focused? And that's what Lucy Letby was. And that's why she filled out those Datix reports. The Datix reports when there's been mistakes often by doctors, isn't it? And she fills them out. And they don't like it, because the nurses are supposed to tacitly kind of like, oh yeah, you don't want to upset the consultants. They're above us. They're above us on the pecking order here. They're superior in some way. And as I put a tweet out the other day, I said, well, the likelihood is that most consultants have probably come from privileged backgrounds, private school. Not all by any means, but a lot of them have. Certainly Jayaram has. He went to the same private school as Matt Hancock. Just thought I'd mention that. I think he's a bit older. But anyway, where was I? So, yeah, you've got that. Lucy's a very conscientious person, highly conscientious, come from her mum and dad. You get these absolute arseholes and fools criticising her, saying, well, they helped her to buy a home and they supported her in the grievance. That's what a loving family does. That's what they did. They loved her because she's a great child, to them, their child, their daughter, a wonderful daughter to them. Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they do that? And she loves them. And she cared for those babies very much, probably more than anyone in that unit, probably more than everyone put together. And it's evident in her WhatsApp messages, in her texts, in her emails, in her writings at home, which they distort, which this absolute... I gotta watch what I say, I suppose, because I get fucking angry about this. Those fucking idiots at Cheshire Police come in, raid her home in her private sanctity, get all her private notes and distort them before the world, even though you can see on the same note that it says I've done nothing wrong, and words like I'm being like persecution. You can see it on, and they distort that. That's how sick the world is that we're in. That the whole world and this sick, evil media thing we call the media, what is it now? What is it now? It's an enemy. It's an enemy of the people. It's an enemy of goodness. It's an enemy of truth, the media. Nobody would have the guts in the media to print that document. They'll focus on that line, which is about Lucy because of this high level of conscientiousness, taking blame on herself because she's being persecuted. She's being blamed. The writer Kafka wrote a lot about this. In his novels and short stories, Kafka talked about the phenomenon of a person in the modern world, and this is going back a bit, the early 1900s, but it's still the same now. It's worse now. He talked about a character being persecuted and the psychological pressure of that. A person persecuted for no reason at all. Persecuted because there's precisely no reason. Not because it's a mistaken thing. A misunderstanding. There's no misunderstandings here. Innocence is targeted. Absolute innocence is targeted. For the most egregious, violent attack by the psyches of individuals, those doctors, and then they bring in the power of the state, exemplified by the police force, the CPS, capitalised on by some greedy bastard called Dewey Evans, who's desperate for political power. Throw that slice of evil into the mix, and then you've got a witch's brew. I shouldn't say witches because I want to do a video based on the Crucible, Arthur Miller's The Crucible, because you wouldn't believe how that play starts. I'll leave that for another time. But it is a perfect storm of accusation here, what's happening in that hospital, with so many things going wrong, so much they want to protect, so much vanity, so much arrogance in those consultants. It can't be them. It can't be them that have gone up to a level 2 and then there's this massive spike, because how does it look on them? It's got to be someone beneath them, because that's how they view the nurses, as beneath them, as assistants. They probably don't, they mix up their names, they probably don't know what they're talking about. They mix them up, they don't know, they don't care, they just... And these are people doing like 2 ward rounds a week, out of the guidelines, outside of the guidelines. Not enough of them. Gibbs is never there. Always ringing him up at home. Jairam's focused on his TV career. Breary, something seriously wrong with that guy. Seriously wrong. It starts with him. It locks into him. Somebody told me he originally trained as an engineer. I've not tracked that up for myself, actually, but then he made a switch to medicine. I don't know what his background is. There's something dark about him. I'm talking about the narcissist, the narcissistic rage. He's the lead consultant in that unit. He's the lead consultant, and he sees the unit with all these deaths. He knows that there's problems with the plumbing. He's heard about it. He knows about that. He knows what sepsis is. He knows when you got sewage running over the floor and where the sinks are and up into the sinks, and you've got pipes dripping in the crawl space above you from the pipes that go above you, in that ward above, the stroke ward or whatever it was. He knows what problems that can cause, but he never mentions it. Evans never mentions it. Nobody mentions it. Nobody mentions sepsis. The elephant in the room. This is what Dr. McLachlan's writing about all the time. It's there all the time. In all the notes for all the babies. All the time. And in the notes for the babies that die or who have crashes, that Evans very easily discounts as not being a problem. How does he manage that? How does he do that? How does Evans do that? And then with the other ones, oh no, this is something else. This is intended harm. This is intended harm for him is code for murder or attempted murder. Back to Lucy. You start your job in 2012. You wait 3.5 years. There's no motive. They try to make out this ridiculous motive that's about Dr. A to get him on, to get him into the ward, even though with all those crashes and deaths, he's not there even less than a quarter of the time, not available to be called even. It's ridiculous. There is no motive, and they know that. Yeah, of course, like Professor Murdo, they've played with the Munchausen stuff. Of course they have, that's their go-to. When they haven't got a motive, they'll go for that. They'll go for that. In the same way that Evans, in a previous case, I might do a video about it one day, ascribed the diagnosis of Munchausen's by proxy to someone he'd never met. He's doing it all by bits of paper. He can do it all, He's not credible. He's a fraud. He's a fraud. He's a fraud. Lucy spends 3.5 years and then starts murdering babies for no reason. No motive. The job she's always wanted to do. Blameless background, no problems in her background at all. A lovely upbringing, loving parents, dedicated to her job. Here's the thing as well, though. I've said it before, but when you're a serial killer and you think people are suspecting you, do you stick around? Do you stick around? Do you take out a grievance process that will seriously wind up the people that are suspecting you? Forcing their hand, pushing them, and that's what happened in the end. That's when they got the police involved. I've said this for, it seems like months now, but it's weeks. Had Lucy left of her own accord because she felt, she'll say, well, I'm not liked here, the consultants don't like me, they're criticising my work, they're criticising my clinical practice, and that's what Karen Rees says. Karen Rees says that Breary came to her criticising Lucy's clinical practice. Nothing about deliberate harm. Had Lucy left at that point, would never know about this. Would never know about this. There would have been no police involvement. What would have happened is the RCPCH would have come in, relegated them down, relegated that unit down to a level 1, which happened anyway, and there would have been 2, 3, 4 negligence claims, which that hospital's dealing with all the time, because they were in the offing in early 2017 anyway. They would have been those negligence claims, and they would have dealt with it. They spent 11 million quid just fighting the claims back in 2013. Not paying out people for negligence, but just fighting it, just paying lawyers. So you've got a murderer. You've got a murderer who over a year into their campaign of murder and attempted murder, decides to want to stay where she's most suspected, gets her father to help her, which he should. Bless that dad, bless Lucy and bless her mum. Bless all their friends. A good family, supporting their daughter. Wants to stay, goes through mediation, demands an apology because she's owed it, because she's damn well owed it by those bastards. By those bastards who can't take responsibility, who want to blame other people for what's happening to those children, who won't even consider the aspect of sepsis related to the drainage issues and their own faults, their many, many, many faults, which we see coming up all the time. Since Lucy left and before, big negligence claims based on doctors' errors. Not nurses, not Lucy, but doctors. They're never in the wrong. They're never in the damn wrong. I am angry at this injustice. So, yeah, you're suspected. You bring a grievance process. You force them to say sorry to you. Brewery doesn't meet with her. Doesn't meet with Lucy. Jayaram does. In the meeting with Jayaram, and this is Jayaram's account. We don't have Lucy's account because she's been arrested and in prison, and was in prison effectively from 2020 on remand. Jayaram says that Lucy said, "Will you work with me?" And Jayaram said, "Yeah, I'll work with you if you're on shift." Didn't want to give anything. This narcissistic fuck. And Lucy follows it up by saying, "But will you be happy to work with me? I want to prove to you. I want to prove to you that I'm a good nurse." Can you hear and feel and see and intuit and know what kind of spirit is saying that? Someone who's been misjudged, someone who's been lied about, someone who knows their worth, someone who knows their worth, and her father knew her worth and helped her through that grievance process. And Karen Rees knows her worth. And the other nurses, I don't know if it's all of them, but some of them certainly knows her worth. Somebody who said when it was mooted that Lucy would be coming back would be so glad to see her back, because she's a mainstay of that ward. Without her, there would have been more deaths. Here's the irony. Without Lucy on that neonatal ward, I'll calm it down a bit. Without Lucy on that neonatal ward, there would have been more deaths and more crashes. That's the truth. That's the truth. Because she covered so many shifts that would have been less covered shifts than had she not been there. Because she was so willing, so conscientious to do that work, knowing the amount of babies that were there to be looked after and how many other staff were there to do it, knowing the risks of that. She stepped in. Wasn't just like, I'll just do my minimum. It's working 60 hours a week because it was understaffed. There's a lot more I can say about that. I want to look at there's two things here. I want to look at what I think of as the patterning of alleged attacks and alleged murders in terms of the time period, when it stops, when it starts, when it stops, when it starts, and the mode used, the method used, the MO that they're saying. Not that happened, because none of it happened. What happened was a basket case of a unit that Lucy was doing her most valiant best to keep going, more than anyone else there, cared more than anyone else there. So yeah, the patterning of what they say are the modes of attack and the timings of it. And there was a lovely, brilliant comment by, I won't use the the handle of the YouTuber is Tequila Mockingbird, and it's with regard to the alleged overfeeding of milk that Evans talks about in the Talk TV video. And there's a brilliant comment there, and I'll read that out when I come to finish the analysis of that Talk TV video, because he says I haven't got to the bit where he says something absolutely outrageous. And it's the measure of the man that he can say it. The measure of the man that can put things that have allegedly become apparent in the future right back into the past as though they were known then, even though they didn't happen at all. But how he can play with time. And that might not be clear because I've got to actually do it to show you what I mean. But I've done that in previous videos, how he mixes up time periods. And he's so dangerous because what he's being tasked to do is look at notes, not present notes, but notes from 1 and 2 years ago. He's not looking at the present, he's looking at the past through a series of shabby notes. His words, shabby notes. And then he finds the crime. I can't remember who, somebody, another commenter way back told me this quote from this Russian jurist in the time of the Soviet period, who says, "Bring me the man and I'll find the crime. Bring me the man and I'll find the crime." Well, in this case, Evans knew that Lucy was off that ward. Bring me the nurse and I'll find the crime. Show me the nurse and I'll find the crime. And that's what happened. That's what happened here. And it's become one of the darkest chapters in British so-called justice. It's got to end. It's gonna have to end. This is gonna have to be overturned. This isn't going away. No way. No way at all. I know the British state is utterly corrupt and its institutions are profoundly corrupt. But we're seeing this dark play out before us, and we won't have it. We won't have it. Everything that we believe in, that's right, that's just, we won't have it. I raise my glass to you all, and thank you for listening if you have, and watching me talk about this. This is a conversation. Reading your comments. It's a conversation we're having. It's not about somebody telling other people what they know. We know this. People are learning about this more and more and more each day. Every aspect of that prosecution case should have been smashed out of court. Should never have got there. The decent defence should have ripped it to pieces. But that was missing. That was missing. It's almost as though we had a defence sleepwalking through it, doing a certain amount. But it should never have got there in the first place. Other than the absolute primal will to attack an innocent person. And once they're in the sights of the people that want to attack them, they never let go, and nobody stops them. Nobody stops the gang of four. Well, the management tried, actually. The management tried. But once the police are involved, they're rubbing their hands. You can see that Hughes, that meathead, you can see how much he enjoys how he's cracked this case, even though he did nothing. Evans did it. Evans cracked it all. Evans cracked it. I mean, there were no crimes, but Evans cracked it. Evans cracked it and then just handed it all over to Hughes, and they're making Yeah, we put a lot of work into this, yeah. It's very hard, we did a lot of hard work. It's very difficult. Yeah, we had to look for the phone, we had to work out all these codes. We had to work out all these codes that Lucy used on her sheets, on her diary, where she put LO. She put LO every time something happened. Although it wasn't LO, was it? It was LD, long day. It was long day for a classic 12-hour shift for a nurse. And that was reported in the newspaper. A special code that these dumbasses, these these people came up with their Sherlock Holmes moment when they saw, oh God, she's writing L-O, what's that? It's long day, mate. It's long day, Hughes. You dumb fuck. It's long day. She's having a 12-hour day there. And it's not just Hughes, it's the whole team. They've taken down that video now because I'm going to rip it to pieces. As it deserves to be. As it deserves to be. I'm not angry, it's not about me. It's fucking righteous anger coming through people. It's coming through me, it's coming through all the people I talk to on Twitter. It's righteous anger that this has happened. We know what's happened, we can see what's happened. We can see the lie behind all this. We can see the concatenation of lies that build up and up and up and up like a chain around an innocent person, like a web. I'm mixing the metaphors now, but like a web or a chain around this innocent person. And then you've got the dead hand of the British state coming in, and it's supposedly unimpeachable judicial system, which one of the best, the envy of the world. Everything's the envy of the world in Britain, isn't it? Everything's the envy of the world. Well, that's a lie. That's a lie that we're the envy of the world. It's an unrealistic claim, and you keep doing that. You keep thinking you're the envy of the world, and then you can get away with all kinds of murder, can't you? Do all kinds of bad things and still tell yourself that you're the envy of the world. Tell other people you're the envy of the world. This is narcissism on stilts. I did a tweet on saying this case exemplifies DARVO, the acronym DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender. Deny, attack, reverse, victim and offender. That's the acronym. Victim and offender. That's what they've done. That's what this case exemplifies. That's what it is. Anyway, this is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I've got to do that. There's more detail about that, about the notes, and there's so much. It's just wrong. We just know it intuitively. It's wrong. And the people that go towards guilt, it's doing something for them. I'm sorry to say, however gently they might say it, it's working for them at some level psychologically to want to find this mass murderer, where there clearly isn't anybody murdering anyone, but there is huge amount of negligence holding back a massive tidal wave, a tsunami of negligence claims. One after the other, one after the other. They were on the cusp of it. They were on the cusp of it in spring 2017. And that was all stopped. All stopped by the police investigation, you know? Anyway, I make no apologies for having a few drinks. There's some great people involved now with this, but what really matters, obviously, is who's representing Lucy, what kind of minds are there, what kind of critical thinking is being brought to bear. People have done it. Dr. McLachen's done it all. Just hand over those 20 Substacks to the defence. And in any sane world, in any just world, That would overturn all those convictions. That alone. I don't need to be a trained doctor or a nurse or a legal eagle or whatever to understand the logic of every one of those Substack articles about all the aspects of this case, and there's still more to come. It's overwhelming. In some perverse way, they got the verdicts of guilty because the trial was so bad, because it was such a bad, ridiculous, thin, pathetic attempt at a prosecution, because it was so sick and evil and twisted and unsubstantiated, because Evans is such an arsehole, because Evans is such a fraud. You can hear it when he speaks. He knows nothing about these things. He says, in the sponge of my brain, he says, I remembered that paper from 1987. And I thank God I did, because it made me realise that was the air embolus. That's the cause of it all. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see at the appeal, won't we, Evans? We'll see at the appeal. You will go down as Roy Meadow on acid, as one of the most disgraced, deplorable, vile individuals that have ever created a miscarriage of justice, more than anyone else has ever been in living memory. That's what will happen to you, Evans, and your ridiculous sidekicks, Bowen and the Marinadis. They're just like Evans Light. They're just there. They're just there, and the police know this, and the prosecution know this. They're just there to echo. They're echoes. So the jury go, oh God, it's not just that. It's not just that Evans guy who says he's not an expert, but he doesn't like to be called an expert. It's too flash for him. It's these other guys as well. Oh my God, there's Marinadis, Mardinaris, and Bohin, and they've come. Oh God, there's doctors as well, yeah. And the defence haven't put up any witnesses at all. What are they trying to tell us? That thereby hangs another tale. I don't know what that tale is actually, but it doesn't smell good. It doesn't smell good. God bless you all, and all who sail in us, something like that. That was daft, wasn't it? We're carrying on with this. We've got to do it. A lot of people, in all sorts of ways, are trying their best. The truth will out. As old Augustine of Hippo said, the truth is like a lion. The truth is like a lion. Set it free, it will defend itself. Well, to a certain extent. To a certain extent. In that trial, the truth was trampled underfoot. It wasn't a lion, it was a caged animal. They caged it because it wasn't allowed to speak. Because in the processes of that court, the lion of the truth, which needed to be spoken through by experts called by the defence counsel, well, he caged them. Him not calling them is a version of caging the truth. Or, if those experts just hadn't come up with anything that people have come up for free in 5 weeks without £1 million being chucked at them, then who are they? Who and what are they? If they're not able to come up with what's been come up with. Either way, it's a fuck up from the defence. In whatever way, just got to hope that with the appeal that there's a different energy attached to this. Whoever's running it, it's a deep, dark mystery. This case. It's not an accident somehow. There's something darker here, broader and darker and deeper. A deeper rabbit hole. Be that as it may, that notwithstanding, the only drive here is to overturn those convictions and tell those parents who have suffered enough that their children weren't murdered, and they weren't, and their children who the police lied to them, effectively. The courts lied to them and told them they've had children were attempted murders had happened, and that none of that's happened. They deserve the truth as well, obviously. And then they can pursue negligence claims, as they were about to, as some of them certainly were about to back in 2017 before they involved the police. Anyway, I'll leave it there. God bless. Good night. Bye. Can't turn it off.